Did you know that here in California, we were actually using more plastic bags in 2021 than we were back in 2004?
Wow.
It's true.
That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it kind of makes you wonder, like, what are we even doing?
Yeah.
Well, we're about to find out because today we are diving deep into California's latest move to tackle plastic pollution. A complete ban on single-use plastic bags at grocery stores coming to a checkout near you in 2026.
And this isn't just another headline.
Right.
It's actually California's second attempt at tackling this issue. And it really highlights how complex environmental policy can be,
Yeah.
especially when you're trying to shift like deeply ingrained habits.
Exactly, because if we rewind back to 2014, California tried to phase out those flimsy single-use bags, right? But instead of a complete ban, they allowed stores to sell thicker, reusable plastic bags.
Yeah, the thinking was sound. Encourage people to switch to sturdier, reusable options, right? But if we look at the data, it just didn't play out that way.
Okay.
And that's where this statistic from State Senator Catherine Blakespear comes in.
Okay.
Even with that earlier ban, Californians were tossing out more plastic bags per person in 2021 than back in 2004.
Wow.
It seems almost counterintuitive.
So what happened? Were people just hoarding these reusable bags, or were they not actually all that reusable after all?
That's a great question, and it gets to the heart of the issue.
Okay.
While well-intentioned, the 2014 law had a fundamental flaw.
Okay.
It assumed that simply labeling something reusable would be enough to change behavior.
Right.
But the reality is many people treated these thicker bags the same way they treated the old ones, single-use and disposable.
Okay, so we're seeing this disconnect between intention and reality.
Exactly.
But even if people weren't reusing them as intended, were those thicker bags even recyclable like they claimed to be?
Right.
I mean, wasn't that the whole point?
Well, the recyclability of those thicker bags is a bit of a gray area.
Okay.
While many were technically recyclable, the process wasn't as straightforward as one might hope. Recycling facilities often struggle to process these thicker plastics, and there are limitations on the types of plastics they can handle.
Right.
So even if those bags ended up in a recycling bin, there's a good chance they still ended up in a landfill.
So it sounds like this well-intentioned law might have inadvertently exacerbated the plastic problem.
Yeah.
It's almost like we tried to put a Band-Aid on a much larger wound.
Yeah.
It really makes you think about the law of unintended consequences, doesn't it?
It absolutely does, and it highlights the importance of considering like all angles of an issue, even with something that seems straightforward, like phasing out plastic bags.
Right.
In fact, this new law has sparked quite a bit of debate, with some groups expressing concerns about, potential downsides.
Oh, tell me more about that. Who's pushing back against this new ban and why?
One of the most vocal critics is the American Recyclable Plastic Bag Alliance.
Okay.
They argue that while reducing plastic waste is obviously, a worthy goal, this particular law could actually lead to an increase in the use of even less eco-friendly alternatives.
That's interesting. What kind of alternatives are we talking about here, and why are they potentially worse than the thicker plastic bags?
They're particularly concerned about those heavier plastic cloth bags that a lot of stores offer as reusable options.
Right, like the really sturdy ones.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And while they may seem like a good alternative on the surface, these bags often require more resources and energy to produce, meaning a larger carbon footprint overall.
Okay.
And here's the kicker. They're often not recyclable at all.
So we could see a scenario where people switch to these bulkier bags thinking they're making a sustainable choice, when in reality they're actually contributing to a different set of environmental problems.
Precisely.
Wow.
And this brings up, I think, a critical point that goes beyond just bags.
Okay.
It's about the life cycle analysis of any product we use.
Right.
We can't just focus on what happens when we're done with something,
Nope.
We need to consider the environmental impact from production to disposal.
It's like that old saying, out of sight, out of mind. Just because we can't see the plastic bag mountain doesn't mean it doesn't exist somewhere.
Exactly. And with plastic bag production, that out-of-sight impact is significant.
Okay.
We're talking about a process that requires fossil fuels, emits greenhouse gases, and can involve harmful chemicals.
Right.
And all of that is before the bag even reaches the checkout counter.
It's amazing how much complexity there is beneath the surface of something we encounter almost every day.
Yeah.
So we've talked about the potential downsides, but let's bring this back to the new law itself. If we're checking out at a California grocery store in 2026, what can we expect? Paint us a picture. So no more paper or plastic question, just a simple paper bag. And that's if you haven't brought your own reusable bags, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The law is really designed to encourage that shift towards reusable options.
Right.
But there are a few nuances.
Okay.
For instance, those thinner plastic produce bags and the ones they use for wrapping meat or bulk items, those are actually exempt from the ban.
Interesting. So there are still going to be some plastic bags floating around the grocery store, just not at the checkout counter.
Right. And that highlights how even well-intentioned legislation can have these, like,
Right.
loopholes or gray areas.
Yeah.
It also underscores that this law alone isn't going to solve the entire plastic pollution problem.
Right.
It's a step in the right direction, but it requires a broader shift in both consumer behavior and manufacturing practices.
Yeah, it really makes you think about our role as consumers.
Hmm.
It's easy to feel like our individual choices don't make much of a difference. But when you multiply those choices by millions of shoppers, it really adds up.
Absolutely. Bringing your own reusable bags is a great start,
Yeah.
but it goes beyond that.
Right.
Do we really need to wrap everything in plastic?
Hmm.
Can we choose products with less packaging?
Right.
These small, everyday decisions can collectively have a huge impact.
So much of this comes down to awareness, doesn't it?
Yeah,
We need to be informed about the problem and the potential solutions and then make conscious choices in our daily lives.
couldn't agree more. And that's where initiatives like this new California law come in.
Right.
They spark conversations, raise awareness, and hopefully nudge us all towards a more sustainable future.
This deep dive has been incredibly eye-opening. We've uncovered the history of plastic bag bans, explored the unintended consequences, and delved into the complexities of finding sustainable solutions as we wrap up. What's one final thought-provoking question we should all be considering, even those of us who don't live in California?
Here's something to ponder.
Okay.
If we're focusing on reducing plastic bags at grocery stores, shouldn't we be looking at other areas where single-use plastics are really prevalent?
Mm.
What about takeout containers, disposable cutlery, or product packaging in general?
Oh, interesting.
Should we expect to see similar bans or regulations in these areas? And if so, what impact might that have on our behavior and the environment as a whole?
It's a great question and one that I think we'll be grappling with for years to come. It's clear that our journey towards a more sustainable future is just beginning. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep those reusable bags handy and those minds open.